I began to suspect something a long time ago, after she signed up for a gym on the other side of town. Jenna has always been in good shape as far as I remember. She was only about 157 centimeters tall and was a top gymnast when she was in high school. She qualified for the Olympic trials, but a torn ACL ended her dreams. Despite everything, she always kept herself in great shape, so her desire to join the gym was never a reason for suspicion until now. Late evenings spent with friends, strange phone calls, her deleted messages, something she had never done before. My wife Jenna and I have always been so open and transparent with each other, but everything has changed in the last month. Her secrets and lack of intimacy with me quickly raised red flags that something was wrong, as we had always had a seemingly great sex life during our 25 years of marriage. I honestly thought neither of us would ever stray from our marriage vows. One evening after dinner, Jenna received a phone call, and I immediately knew something was wrong just by the look on her face when the phone rang. She quickly excused herself and went to the bathroom, only to come out a short time later and say that Sarah, one of her friends from the gym, was going through a rough patch due to her divorce and she needed to come over. I asked her about it, but she brushed me off like it wasn't important and said she'd be back in a couple of hours. Right after she got into the car and drove away, I knew I had to follow her to see if my suspicions were correct. Luckily for me, traffic was noticeably light in the city that night, and I was able to keep track of her taillights as she drove. Jenna stopped in front of a small house that I didn't recognize as belonging to any of her friends and parked the car. I quickly turned off the lights and parked about a block away, far enough away that she wouldn't see me. She soon got out of the car, hesitated and looked around, then quickly walked to the side of the house and disappeared inside. I waited a few minutes, then got out of the car and walked up to the house. There weren't many street lights in the area where this house was located, so I was able to stay in the shade pretty well. The lights were on in the house, and I crept along it to look through the windows. What I saw made my heart sink, and only confirmed my suspicions. There was my Jenna, in the arms of some young muscular man who was apparently in his mid-20s, kissing him very passionately. I could only guess that he must be someone who works out at the same gym she goes to. Watching her like that, you'd think I should be angry, but all I could do was feel as if my heart and soul had been ripped out. It didn't take long before their clothes started to come off as they kissed feverishly. Why I couldn't stop watching, I don't know. I guess I thought that somehow it was my fault and maybe this was some kind of punishment for all the times I left her alone while I was deployed in the Marine Corps. After they were both completely undressed, he picked her up as if she were a bag of feathers and carried her into the bedroom, closing the door behind him with his foot. I quickly moved to this side of the house and looked out the window. There was only about 2 centimeters of visibility through the partially closed blinds, but it was enough to see them having animal sex. I started to get aroused, and one side of my brain was screaming, "What's wrong with you? It's your wife having sex with another man!" The other side of my brain was getting excited, and I wanted to see more. This man paused for a few minutes while they passionately kissed again before he started having sex with her again. I was rooted to the spot as I watched in a daze, not caring whether I was alive or dead at that moment. I could see them both breathing heavily, holding each other, still in a daze from the amazing sex. When they started kissing again, that's when I was finally able to gather my strength and move away from the window. I slowly walked to my car, got into it, and drove home. I must have been on autopilot because everything was now fuzzy. I parked in the driveway, turned off the engine, and buried my face in the steering wheel. The tears came hard, along with sobs of pain and suffering from what I had just seen. My body was numb, and I couldn't move for several minutes as I sat there in the dark. I collected my thoughts and went into the house, not quite sure what I was going to do. I poured myself a glass of Jameson whiskey and sat in the living room to think about all the years Jenna and I had been together, with little or no problems. Or so I thought. Where did I go wrong? Then the images of them having sex played over and over in my head as I sat there downing my glass of whiskey. The most confusing thing for me was, why am I horny? as the whiskey began to be absorbed into my system. These images really began to excite me and began to mask the pain and suffering of betrayal that I felt. I unbuttoned the button and began to satisfy myself. I imagined myself standing at that window again, watching my wife having sex with another man. I changed my shirt, poured another glass of whiskey, and headed out to the garage to get down to business when she got home. About 30 minutes later, her car pulled into the driveway. She got out of the car, and I called out to her through the open garage door. "So, is Sarah okay?" Jenna didn't come into the garage like she usually did when I was there. Instead, she looked around a little, couldn't look me straight in the eyes, and said, Yeah, she's fine, but I might have to sit with her again. She's having a hard time. I'm going to go to bed now, Pete. Good night." Jenna turned and disappeared into the house. It really hit home. Usually she would come and kiss me goodnight, but not this time. Maybe she felt guilty because she had just had sex with another man, or she just didn't care anymore. I didn't know. I finished that glass of whiskey and began to withdraw into myself. The love of my life ripped out my heart and gave it to me piece by piece. I closed the garage and walked into the house, sitting in the rocking chair, trying to figure out what to do. The alcohol had already taken full effect, and before I could do anything else, I fell asleep right there in the chair. The next morning, I woke up with every joint in my body aching from sleeping in the chair, and just as I was starting to come out of my brain fog, Jenna came out and looked at me with a smile, saying, "Why did you sleep in the chair, honey?" I felt a surge of anger that was quickly growing, but I fought to keep it under control, thinking that she had no right to call me that anymore. I shrugged and said, "I don't know. I probably fell asleep watching TV." Jenna stared at me for a moment longer, and I felt daggers fly from my mind straight at her as I stared back. She must have seen my thoughts because the smile disappeared from her face. I walked past her and headed to the bathroom, not allowing her to say or ask anything again. I took a shower, then put on clean clothes and went to the kitchen to get coffee. Jenna made scrambled eggs and toast for us, so I sat across from her to try and eat. I took a few pieces of toast and washed it down with coffee, but I couldn't eat anything else. Jenna looked at me with a question in her eyes and said, "Honey, are you okay? Is there something wrong?" Again with this dear, and again I had to control the seething inside. I looked down at the table and said, "Yes, everything will be fine." I got up and went into the bedroom for a few minutes to collect my thoughts. I quickly came up with a story and went back to the kitchen. Jenna was washing dishes at the sink when I told her, "I'm going to the quarry to do a little fishing. I'll be back later." Jenna nodded okay, but had a blank look on her face as I walked out. Usually, she was always happy to have the opportunity to come with me, but this time I didn't even ask her, and left without saying goodbye or kissing her goodbye. I spent most of the day at the quarry with nothing but thoughts about what I should do, whether it be getting angry and kicking her cheating ass out of the house or waiting and gathering more evidence against her. I decided on the latter for now. If things went badly, I wanted to make sure I had what I needed to show that she was the reason for our downfall. It was already about 6 p.m. when I received a text from Jenna. "Honey, I'm making chicken. It will be ready soon. What time will you be home?" I took a deep breath and fought the urge to throw the phone into the quarry, but remembered that I needed to remain calm so she wouldn't suspect that I knew what she was doing, so I replied that I'd be home in a while. I collected myself emotionally on the way home, and when I parked the car, I turned on all my acting skills as I entered the house. Jenna smiled as I walked into the kitchen just as she was putting food on the table. I smiled back and even went over to kiss her on the forehead, saying, "Honey, your chicken is the best, and it smells wonderful." She had a big smile and relief on her face. I played my role perfectly. "Well, I'm glad your fishing made you feel better. Did you catch anything?" she asked. "No, just a couple here and there, but nothing worth bringing home," I said with more confidence in my acting than I continued. I couldn't help but eat the fried chicken she made for dinner, and as always, it was the absolute best. After we finished and she put the dishes away, Those thoughts started coming back as I watched her sexy little ass head towards the sink. I sat quietly, lost in thought, for a few minutes before she said, "Pete, Sarah called me today while you were fishing and asked me to come back again tonight. Is that okay?" Before I could think deeply about it, I simply blurted out, "Of course I have no plans. Go, darling." She turned, nodded, and smiled, but could not look me in the eyes. I became a good actor in this unwritten play that could only end as a Shakespearean tragedy. Jenna finished cleaning up and headed into the bedroom to change while I quickly made a plan to keep an eye on her again. Once it was dark, Jenna came out, giving me a quick kiss before leaving. As she closed the door behind her, all I could do was whisper under my breath, "You're a damn cheater." As soon as her car was out, I went into the hallway closet and took out our camera, made sure it was charged, then changed into dark clothes to minimize the risk of being seen. Let it be known that deceiving a retired Marine, especially one who was in intelligence, may not be the best idea. I drove to the man's house and parked down the street from him. I could see Jenna's car parked a little further away from him, so I knew for sure she was there. I took my camera and snuck back towards the house, staying in the shadows to avoid being noticed. I walked over to the side window and there was Jenna sitting on the couch making out with this man. The blinds were open a few inches and the light was dim, but still enough to see them well enough for the camera. I turned it on and started recording how they caressed each other. My heart pounded in my chest as I knelt watching her caress another man, and again I had to hold back the urge to scream as I realized I was becoming aroused again. A few minutes later, they began demolition. This was not the Jenna I knew. It was a different Jenna. Slutty, cheating Jenna, who thought she had cheated on me. I turned off the camera and walked away from the window. I got to my truck and headed home, feeling the pain and suffering flow through me again. Am I losing my wife to this man? I got home and quickly downloaded the video I made of Jenna and Todd and saved it to a flash drive for safety, then poured myself a glass of whiskey. I drank about half of it while sitting in my chair before I heard her park her car. Jenna walked in and saw me sitting there, just staring into space. She couldn't look at me straight and muttered something about being tired and going to bed. Well, at least she felt guilty, or seemed to. I finished my whiskey and went to bed about an hour later. Usually when I get into bed, Jenna moves to cuddle up to me or something, but not this time. Sleep did not come easily to me that night. A week or so passed, and I was able to follow her there a few more times and shoot more videos of the two of them together. In all my years with Jenna, I don't think we've ever had that much sex. The next day, when Jenna went to the hairdresser and went shopping, I transferred the entire video to DVD with a video commentary at the end. I poured out everything that had accumulated in me since that first night when I saw her cheating, put it in the player with a note attached to the remote control on the kitchen table for her to watch when she got home. I hurriedly packed a few bags with all my stuff, then went out to the garage and loaded all my tools and camping gear into the back of my truck, closed the bed lid, and drove away. I checked into a small motel on the other side of town. The place was reminiscent of the old days when roadside motels were popular. I checked in with a young girl in her 20s with fiery red hair and a nose ring. She was plump with big breasts and smiled when I paid for the room with a card. Then I realized it was Dana, the daughter of our friends, Larry and Maggie. I haven't seen her for a long time, but she's definitely grown and rounded out. "Mr. Donovan, I thought it was you. Do you remember me?" she asked. "Yes, now I remember you, Dana. How are you doing?" I said, in a correct tone, trying not to show my emotions. She smiled and said, "Oh, I'm fine. But may I ask why you're staying here?" I replied, "This is probably not the best time to ask this question, Dana. Can I just get the room key?" Dana's smile faded, and she nodded, completing check-in and handing me the room key. "Oh yes, of course, Mr. Donovan. If you need anything, just let me know, okay?" I nodded, took the room key, and left the office. I grabbed my bag from the truck and headed to one of the small cottage rooms. It wasn't particularly luxurious, but it was clean and quite cozy with all the necessary amenities. I closed the door, threw my bag on the floor and lay down on the bed. Jenna had probably already gotten home and seen my note. I just lay there and waited. A couple of hours later, my phone rang. It was Jenna. I swiped to reject the call, and it went to voicemail. Then, shortly after, I received a text message that said, "Pete, oh my God, dear, please talk to me. I'm so sorry. Please call me and tell me you're okay. Please." I read this and threw the phone aside in anger, then cracked open the fresh bottle of Jameson whiskey I had picked up on the way to the motel and drank a few sips, feeling the alcohol burn my throat. But it was nothing compared to the burn I felt in my heart. I was a broken person and didn't know what to do other than try to numb the pain. I felt the effects of the whiskey almost immediately as I lay on my bed, ignoring every new notification that came through my phone. I decided enough was enough and simply turned it off after about the 50th ring. A little later, I heard a quiet knock on the booth door and, going to the window, I saw that it was Dana. I opened the door and she asked, "Hi, Mr. Donovan. Sorry to bother you, but I couldn't help but notice something was bothering you earlier and was wondering if I could come in and talk." So I opened the door for her to come in and sit down, closing the door behind her. I asked her, pouring another glass of whiskey, "Would you like it, Dana? If you can't because of work, I understand." "Of course I will. And no, I'm not at work anymore. Just thought you might need someone to talk to since you seemed really worried earlier," she said as I handed her the glass I had just poured. I poured myself another glass and sat on the edge of the bed. Any hesitation in sharing information was almost gone. I'm sure the whiskey helped. So I just openly told her, "I caught my wife with another man, more than once. I saw with my own eyes how she's sex with some guy named Todd several times, and I even wrote it down as proof. In the end, I couldn't take it anymore, so I packed my things and left." Emotions got the better of me, and I started crying in front of Dana. She stood up and hugged me, saying, "Oh my God, Mr. Donovan, I'm so sorry this happened. Why would she do this? You always seemed like such a good husband to her, as far as I remember. I don't understand it at all." I leaned against Dana and just let all the emotions come out, feeling like a little child being comforted. Only a few minutes later, I realized that I was crying on her large breasts. I pulled away, noticing a large wet spot on her outerwear where I had cried, and said, "Oh, my apologies, Dana. I didn't mean to cry on your chest like that." I leaned back and lay on the bed looking at the wall. Dana came closer, sitting next to me on the bed, and said, "It's okay, Mr. Donovan. It wasn't bothering me. You needed reassurance, and that's why I came to talk, because I knew something was wrong." Dana took my hand and began to stroke my shoulder. Being so close to her, I noticed how sweet she smelled, like new spring flowers in the cool morning breeze. It was almost as intoxicating as whiskey, and I couldn't help but say to her, "Dana, you smell wonderful. What is that scent you have?" She laughed a little and said, "It's just the bath soap I use, Mr. Donovan. But thanks for noticing." I smiled halfway at her and nodded as she continued to hold my hand, and then added, "I'm so sorry again that you had to see your wife in that position. I can't imagine how terrible that was for you." I nodded again, and she leaned over and hugged me, pressing her soft, voluptuous breasts against me again, this time against my hand. "Maybe I can help you forget about this, at least for a little while," Dana said in a quiet voice. I looked at her. Her face was so close to mine, and she smiled slightly, nodded, then leaned closer and kissed me tenderly. I accepted it, and we started kissing with more passion and intention. Her lips tasted like candy, like the sweetest kiss I can ever remember. I turned around so she could rest more on my chest and hugged her. Holding her like this, I couldn't help but notice that, although she was a chubby girl, she was strong and firm. My hands began to explore her as our kisses became more intense and deeper. My inhibitions went away as my hands soon began massaging her breasts through the material of her top, causing her breathing to become more noticeable as we kissed. We kissed for a few more minutes before Dana pulled away with a very seductive smile on her face. She stood up and went to close the blinds on the windows, then did a slow, sexy dance right in front of me. As her clothes slowly fell off, I couldn't help but admire her big, beautiful curves, her gorgeous, big, firm breasts. My God, she was beautiful. I had never been with a girl as big as Dana, and I kicked myself for ever rejecting them. Dana then bent over to undress me, and we started study sex. Dana collapsed on top of me, and we lay there for several minutes. The only sounds filling the room were our heavy, uncontrollable breathing. I gently rubbed back and forth over her curvaceous body and kissed her forehead. She looked at me and smiled, then said with a slight laugh, "That was so intense, Mr. Donovan. You are an amazing lover." "Please, Dana, call me Pete. I think we've long since moved beyond the whole Mr. thing," I said with a smile. She nodded and smiled back, saying, "Okay, now it'll be Pete." I kissed her tenderly again, feeling her sweet lips on mine again. This amazing young woman made sure to make this old, heartbroken man feel loved again, and I wasn't going to ruin the moment by asking her to get off me. So we continued to kiss and caress each other in this way for what seemed like an hour or more, until the kisses became more purposeful again, and we again get busy, love. Dana smiled and closed her eyes on me, saying in an extremely tired voice, "Oh my God, I have never felt so good in my life, Pete. I said before that you are an amazing lover, but now I must add, you are simply incredible." She laughed quietly and leaned her head against me again. I just smiled and replied, "Well, Dana, you caused all this, so that means you're just as amazing." It didn't take long before we both fell asleep in each other's arms, forgetting about everything in the world, at least for that night. When I woke up the next morning, Dana was gone, but she left a note that said, "Dear Pete, thank you for an incredible evening. I had to leave because I needed to get home to get ready for work in the morning. What started out as an attempt to comfort you turned into a night of unbridled passion and pleasure that I had never experienced before, and I would like to thank you again. Most men don't like us fat girls, but you showed me that a mature man like you doesn't mind it at all. Call me if you need anything today or if you want me to come by after work." Of the day, I smiled as I set the letter aside, remembering how wonderful she made me feel. I got up, went to the shower, then got dressed. The best part was that I never thought about that cheating wife of mine while Dana and I were having sex. I grabbed my keys and went in search of breakfast, but when I opened the door, I saw Jenna sitting on the ground at the back of my truck, looking like she had been run over several times by a herd of horses. Her eyes were bleeding, her makeup was running all over her face, and her hair looked like it had several rats in it. As soon as she saw me, she stood up and rushed towards me, already crying, "Pete, please don't leave me. I'm so sorry, sweet. Please, God, don't go. I need you and I can't live without you." Jenna literally jumped at me, almost knocking me over as I retreated back towards the door of the house. She was sobbing at me in hysterics, her body shaking uncontrollably. I couldn't help but feel sorry for her, so I picked her up, holding her close until she had her arms around my neck and her legs around my waist, and struggled to get the key into the door lock until I could open it and carry her inside, to sit on the bed. She didn't want to let me go, crying louder than ever. My God, what will happen to us now? Why did she do this to us? Finally, I managed to push her away, and she almost instantly curled up into a ball, continuing to sob, repeating how sorry she was. I sat there on the chair in front of her, looking at her so pathetic, lying there like that. If someone who didn't know her saw her, they would think she was some crazy homeless woman wandering the streets. My heart broke for her, and I couldn't help but reach out my hand to gently caress her cheek, pushing away her tousled hair. Jenna opened her eyes and looked at me, and in an instant she flew off the bed and curled up in my lap, clinging to me even tighter than before. "Pete, please don't leave me. I promise I'll do whatever you say. Just forgive me. I love you, and I don't want to lose you," she sobbed to me. I just sat there, holding her like a father holds his child, and sighed to myself. After a few minutes, I couldn't help but soften even more, so I stood up and carried her to the bathroom. When I brought her there, I began to lower her, but she clung even tighter. Damn, those gym sessions only made her stronger than she already was. Jenna, you need to take a shower. I'm not going anywhere and I'll help you, I said quietly in her ear. I felt her grip loosen, and I let her stand on her own. I lifted her sweater over her head. Her arms fell to her sides as if she was now numb to everything, continuing to sob occasionally. I unclasped her bra, then pulled down her sweatshirt and panties. She came out of them and now stood in front of me completely naked. Her slender body had always been a huge turn-on before, but now I couldn't help but look at her with disgust, thinking about how many times she had cheated with that person. I walked past her and turned on the shower, setting it nicely hot for her and helping her in. Jenna, come to your senses now. Clean up and we'll talk when you're done. I turned to leave and she grabbed my hand, shook her head no, and started crying again. I'm not going anywhere, damn it. We'll talk when you're done. I pushed her hand away from me, walked out of the bathroom, and came back to sit on the chair and think about what I should do next. I heard her crying in the bathroom, and that didn't make the situation any easier. I couldn't help but remember that she was the woman I'd lived with for almost 30 years, and I couldn't help but continue to love her. About 10 minutes later, I heard the shower turn off, and a few minutes after that, Jenna came out of the bathroom with a towel wrapped around her head and another wrapped around herself. She couldn't look at me directly, but she quickly came up to me and sat down opposite me on the table. She seemed to feel my gaze boring into hers and met it for a second, before looking back down at the table, taking a bite of her bagel, and sipping her coffee. We just sat there, without exchanging a word, until we finished eating. I tried to collect my thoughts so as not to express my anger to her, because I knew that it would only make her cry again, and I needed to know why she did it. I took a deep breath and said, Jenna, I just want to know why. Why did you cheat on me with that man? What did I do to deserve this from you when I tried to be a good husband to you? Jenna looked at me again, and I saw tears begin to fill her eyes. She slowly shook her head, struggling to say, I don't know, Pete, I'm sorry. She looked down at the table again as tears streamed down her face, then began to cry again. I took a deep breath, realizing there was no point in trying to discuss this now, so I stood up, put my plates in the sink, and headed back to the guest bedroom. We barely spoke to each other for the next few days, saying only a few words when absolutely necessary, but Jenna wouldn't let me out of her sight. If I went out into the garage to get something, she would watch me from the window, as if making sure that I did not leave her. When we needed something from the store, she asked me to go with her. It wasn't good, and I really started to worry about both of our mental health. A few nights later, after I had slept for a couple of hours, I was awakened by someone crawling into bed with me, and when I was fully awake, I felt her small, naked body pressed against me from behind, and her small hand was on my side. I didn't want her near me, but at the same time I couldn't help but want her. I missed her. I missed what we had. When I woke up the next morning, Jenna was still pressed against me, and when I turned and looked at her, her eyes were wide open, looking at me as if she wanted to say something. I turned and looked at her, waiting for her to speak to me, hoping that she would finally have an answer for me. She took a deep breath, then began to talk to me. Pete, let me first say thank you for letting me sleep next to you last night. I finally got my first sleep in a week. She paused as I nodded at her, then continued. I'm so sorry about what happened, but can I just say that you are a wonderful husband and person, and what I did had nothing to do with that you didn't please me. I can't explain exactly what happened to make me do it. It just happened, and the more it went on, the more I wanted to be treated like the good-for-nothing bitch I was. It was like an addiction that I was addicted to. I couldn't give up once I started. It took the fear of losing you for me to come back to reality, to understand what I was losing. I listened to her every word and tried to control my emotions. Then I asked her, Do you love him, Jenna? She shook her head emphatically and said, Oh God, no. He was pushing me away, Pete. I just couldn't stop. Jenna turned away from my eyes and, for the first time in days, seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. A weight lifted from her, and then she looked me in the eyes again and finished, I love you, darling, and I will never stop loving you. Jenna placed her hand on my heart, and those sweet doe eyes began to melt, the last bits of ice in my veins. When she called me honey, it didn't make me angry this time, and I felt like she really meant what she said. I reached out to hug her, and as if on cue, she pressed herself against me, burying her face in my chest and wrapping her arms around me as I held her tightly. Jenna, this will take a while, but know that I don't want to give up. You are still the love of my life, and I will fight with you to help us both heal, I told her quietly. I felt her body begin to shake, and Jenna began to sob into me, holding on to me for dear life. But this time I knew they were tears of relief, tears of gratitude that we had a chance to make things right. Jenna's smile returned that day, and in the following weeks, we talked and spent more time together than we had in years. And with the help of a counselor, we were able to regain what had been lost. I stayed in the guest bedroom for a while longer, but Jenna kept coming over and getting into bed with me at night, so we decided it was time to go back to our bedroom. That first night back in our bedroom, we made love for hours, taking time to truly enjoy each other with a passion we hadn't felt in years. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.